Hello, welcome to another tooling video. This one's going to kind of continue where we left off, but move towards, we'll have a go at installing a Docker container setup so that we can use Docker in our WSL on Windows. So it's going to require us to install Docker Desktop on the Windows side, set it up in the settings where it actually realizes that WSL's there, and set up the bits for the WSL side as well. And then we can kind of do a test and set up sort of like a quick container just to try it out. Once we've tested it as the container on WSL side, we can then open up VS Code and link that in with the container and then test it with another repo and do it that way. So let's start by sharing the screen and start downloading the bits we need. So I'm going to just open up a terminal to make sure everything's all good. So this is the Kali Linux side, this is the WSL. So maybe zoom in a little bit just so it's a bit bigger for the recording. All good. We have our projects and everything all set there. We're going to be kind of copying a repo or grabbing a repo for some stuff and dealing with that as we need to. But for now, I need to download a few bits. One of them, well, the main one is the Docker Desktop. So kind of do this. So I'm looking for Docker Desktop. Docker Desktop for Mac and Windows. We want to download Docker Desktop. Download for Windows. There we go. Let's grab the Docker Desktop. Save the installer. I'll pause this whilst it downloads. It's only about 4 minutes, but there's no need for me to just sit here and not say anything for 4 minutes, I think. So I'll see you in a second. Okay, that's downloaded, so we can actually now just run it. So click on it and let it run. It'll do the standardized sort of UAC in a moment, hopefully. Just asking me whether I'm sure I want to run it. Maybe. There we go. Yes, I'd like to run it. So it's going to do a few things. Download a load of packages. This is like an installer with the online installer versus offline installer, so you have to wait for a while for it to download all the packages and stuff. Then install required components for WSL2. This will be here if you've followed all the previous stuff what we've done and got WSL2 existing and working. You'll have this little tick here. And add shortcuts to desktop. You can, you don't have to, it's up to you. I'm just going to click OK with those settings and it's going to unpack and do its thing. I'm going to pause again because this takes a little while and I'll see you in a second. Okay, so basically another thing you've got to think about is this has to close and log out. So it will be kind of sort of not disconnecting the computer, but if you've got anything that you need to save, make sure you keep it safe first and don't have it so you're going to lose work. That happens for this. It wants to log out and close and log out and sort of get ready to set up fully. And then when you log back in, it's ready. So let's click on that and do that. So this system's signing out. That's the one over there, not the one I'm on. So now I can log into my dev box. Once that's logged back in, Docker will try and start up and do its thing. So let's just let that do. There we go, we're in. And if we wait for a few seconds, we should have a Docker thing appear soon down here somewhere. Let's take a look. Okay, and OneDrive, just waiting and waiting. There we go. There we go. Docker's there. It's now going to sort of like try and do its startup and stuff. Like Docker is starting. So we'll wait for a little while. It'll say it's starting the Linux container WSL2 backend. So that it's kind of joining and connecting up that. And then there's a few settings in the Docker desktop that we actually need to do. But I'm going to wait for it to get to the point where it's ready. So I'll pause and then we'll be back in a second once it's ready. Okay, so literally we now have this Docker. I didn't open this. This is part of the startup it's got there. It's saying, need a Python or Flask example to get started. Check out our Docker container samples, blah, blah, blah. I don't really want the tips right now. Here's a few easy steps to get started. What I'm going to do, I'm going to skip the tutorial for now. And we have a simple, no containers running. Here, grab a container. So Docker run. This will actually download a container and start it up, and it'll just be like a getting started website container. So let's test that. Let's copy this. Well, actually, we can't test this just yet. There's one more or a couple more little steps. Go into settings and check that use WSL2 based engine is enabled. Yeah. Then we go to resources and we check on WSL integration. Enable integration for default WSL distro, and also we can enable integration to any other distros that are available. If you've got multiple ones, you just can click on these and tick them up and apply and restart them. And you wait for a little while for them to restart and do their thing. Okay. Once all of that is correct, we can go out of settings, make a copy of this, open up your Windows terminal, which will hopefully, if you've set it up the same as me, have WSL in there. So we now have WSL. If we type in Docker version, we have Docker installed. How cool is that? Because I didn't do a apt-get install or anything, but because it's done the integration, it's got it in there. So now we can literally create some VMs in a way, or some containers, and we'll do the general one, what it's telling us. So I'll just paste that in. So it's doing Docker run as a daemon, so it's in the background. Map port 80 to port 80. So our local host port 80 will go to this container's port 80. And then Docker getting started is the name of the container that we're going to download and run. So I'll press enter here. It's going to do its download and grab the bits and do what it needs to. Because it's going, oh, well, I can't find it locally. So that means I need to get it. So it's getting all the bits for the container. And getting all the bits, doing its thing, extracting all the bits it needs to, and then starting it up. Need to allow it to have access to the ports, otherwise we're not going to be able to access anything. And that's it. It's running. We can clear this. This is almost irrelevant now. We can move this out of the way. But if we look on our Docker desktop, there's a VM here. We can go into its CLI, so we can actually go into it as if it's a computer. I can list it. This is the actual container that I'm inside now. I can close that off. We can open in a browser. So we can literally open its website as such. So if opening a browser, we'll go and literally open a browser and go to localhost at port 80. And we can take a look at what that's doing. If we look, it's localhost. It's loading up. A little bit slow because of the, what's it? But okay, so now this is running, this is a web server running with this web page set up on the container. So we are literally on a web page that's actually hosted on the container. So it's got like a web server and stuff. So it's kind of explaining a few little bits and pieces about Docker itself and what containers are and things like that. So you can literally have a look how to make persistent databases, updating apps, sharing different apps, creating applications, and so on and so forth. But we can close that. That was cool. So we've got Docker Desktop. It's running. It's integrated with WSL. Next thing I want to do, first I'll kind of stop this one because I don't need that for anything anymore. That was just purely just to test and do. Now I can delete the container because I don't need it. It's going to moan and say we've got no containers, but that's fine. Now what we can do is there's a repo in Visual Studio Code's repos to actually do something. But what I want to do is make sure that I've got certain extensions in first. So I'm going to close all this off. That was the Windows terminal stuff, but that's fine. Just when we was doing settings from the other day. Now I want to take a look at what extensions we have. So if we go to extensions, and then we can look at what's installed and what we can install. Now, recommended Docker makes it easy. Java extensions and all the other bits and pieces recommended. Great. Yes, I'll probably grab those at some point. Right now, I want to get the, what's it called? I'll find the name of it in a moment. I do have it somewhere. We want remote WSL extension and stuff. So we want like remote, and wait for a second. Got remote containers, remote WSL. First, I'll get remote development because that usually gives me quite a few interesting. It gives me containers, gives me the WSL and the SSH. So I've got all three things that I could need. Looks like they're already installed. So that's great. So I've already got remote containers because I do that as standard. So if we take a look at it though, it's like develop consistent stuff, blah, blah, use it as a container and showing you how to do bits and pieces. Now, when you create a new sort of development environment, you can have like a Docker file. And if you have a Docker file in the folder, that can spawn a Docker container. So we can take a look. They've got one for us to use. Where is it? Somewhere around. A little bit further down. Getting started here. They've got an actual repo to try Node locally. So this rolls out a container that's like a Node server. So let's copy that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to clone it to my local. So I'm going to have a look. CD projects. CD temp project. Why not? That's some random testing stuff. We've been doing stuff for that. What I'll probably do now is I'll do a git clone of that repo. And this is another project itself, really. I'm going to CD into that repo. Maybe zoom in a little bit so you can see that. Then I'm going to run VS Code in there. So code dot. Now, because we've got the remote containers extension installed, it should tell us some things in a moment. Let's let it do its thing. It's enabling WSL, it's opening remote, it's going okay, great. Then if we take a little while, it says, oh, I found a folder containing dev container configuration file. Ooh, we have a container configuration file. So if it's got a .dev container with a configuration file, that means it's a development container ready to do some development on. Oh, it's disappeared. Damn it. Oh, good. So folder contains dev container. So we can reopen it inside the container instead of just in WSL. We can reopen it inside the container. Now it doesn't have the container, but because it's got a dev container, it will download all the image files, create an instance of that container, start it up, and we'll be within that virtual environment instead. So we'll actually be inside that development container. And it will be available in Docker Desktop as well. It does take a little while, so I'm going to pause because opening the remote is not as simple as opening the remote. If I click show log, I think, if you're going to let me, it might be taking a little bit longer. But usually if you get the log up, it will kind of show you step by step what it's doing. But in general, it's just downloading all the bits and doing the same sort of thing as when we did that getting started development container. But it's doing it via VS Code. So I'll pause here and then we'll kind of see once it's kind of got to the point of being here. So it took a little bit while, but as you can see, it kind of created the app and got it all set up. Then it ran the stuff and ended up doing a yarn install automatically. So it ended up setting up the entire thing and then just pressing the key to close your terminal. And now we've got, if we look down here, dev container Node.js. So instead of being WSL directly, it's actually inside the container. So if I go and open a terminal, let's see what's going on here. Notice that it's different. It's Node workspaces. It's completely different now. It's actually within that terminal instead. It's actually within that container. So we're doing ls. It's the actual project itself, and it's remotely there. It's not on my Windows system. It's not technically on the WSL anymore. So it's contained now, as far as it's concerned, within that confines. So we've still got access to edit everything like normal. So it's making a little Express server at port 3000, local host. It's got a hello remote world basically. It's just a hello world sort of Express server by the look on it, with all the bits in there. Okay. So in essence, I suppose we could run the server. So let's take a look at our package JSON and see whether it's got a run or what it's got there. Start. It's got a run start. So we can literally do a yarn start to start up our server. So let's give that a go. Yarn start. It's running it, and it's running the thing. It's asking whether we want to allow access. Service is running. So we can actually preview the port stuff and everything. So I'll preview an editor. What's that doing? Simple browser. That's pretty cool. So we can actually preview a browsing of it within the editor without having to open another browser separately. So we've got access to have a full dev end-to-end environment to actually do things with this. So if I maybe change this a little bit, say if I wanted to have NodeMon instead of just Node, we could go and think about like what we want to have as dependencies, like dev dependencies and things like that. At the moment, Express is a dependency. We can quit out of this for a second. Now I'll do like a yarn add, what was it? NodeMon. I think that should be doable. Right. So I'll add that and build it in. So fetch the packages, set up the NodeMon stuff ready to use. I think I should have put -- saved. Oh no, it's fine. It's done it automatically. I didn't need the -- save. So NodeMon is now a dependency. It's added to the file, so it will keep doing on the. So if we made like a commit to this, it would have that as part of it next as well. And what I wanted to do here, instead of running node server, I'll run NodeMon. So node monitor. This will literally, or node daemon, whatever you want to call it. So literally this will run and then it will track changes to the files. So if the server changes, it will refresh and reload the server. So that'll be great. So we've got reloading of website, but we've also now got the whole reloading of the server. So let's run the server now. So yarn start. Actually, first we need to save that JSON file. So yarn start. Running NodeMon, and it's running. Great. So let's close that one and do another preview of it again in editor. So we've got our simple browser browsing to there, and we've got no hello world. So there we have. It's just taking its time. Right. So now if I go to my server, move that probably over here. Come on. Yeah. So if I go to my server and now decide to change hello remote world to, I don't know, save it, we get a reload of that. We don't get a reload of the web page by looking at it, but that's okay. We can just check again, refresh the browser, see how that goes. Now, after refreshing the browser, hello remote world 2. So the server is updated and it's there still. Hasn't closed off, it's sort of reloaded. So you don't have to like close your server down, edit your file, turn your server back on. You can do it live. So far it seems to be working fine. Now, if we take a look at our actual Docker containers, there's one here. And if we go, okay, well, let's have a look. What's it doing? The container's been started. Great. Let's have a look at the stats. What's happening on it? Its memory usage is 500 odd meg, using bits of CPU as it goes. Hasn't really had to do much in the way of disk writes. A little bit of network traffic because we've been kind of utilizing it. We can inspect what's entailed in it. It's got the actual path to where it is, what version of Node it's running, what version of Yarn it's running, and so on and so forth, and then what's been mounted up. So this has all of the bits and pieces. You can even shell into it. If we do an LS, it'll be the same sort of thing. We've got workspaces, we've got stuff. This is the actual main system. Got VS Code server. It's using workspace. Oh, it's not allowing for tabs. CD VS Code -remote try, because this is the actual overarching OS, but then in our thing we're actually remoted into the workspace for it. So VS remote try, I think it's called, is it? Oh, try node. Now if I do an LS, look, it's got all the same stuff. This is the project, it's in the container. So we've actually got access to the overall operating system and everything there as well. So we can look at the logs again. It's just started the container, so there's nothing crazy there. So in essence, we've got a development environment working. We can do full node development directly in this thing. We can Control C, clear this, go in node version. It's got 14, so it's got node version 14 built into this container. NPM have we got? Yep, version 6. Yarn, obviously we've got. Yarn version 1.22. So we actually have these things in. How cool is that? Right, so I'm going to close off the container now. So we can reopen in WSL, we can reopen locally, rebuild the container if we want. We can show our logs, open folder in stuff. There's loads of little bits and pieces. We can look at the settings and see what it's doing, what we can actually add to and stuff like that. I'm not going to specifically mess with that just yet. So we now have ability to do these things. Hopefully that was useful in some way and entertaining. We'll close this off for now. Once I've closed that off, I'm going to now stop the container. So press stop. You don't have to do this, I just thought I may as well. And then I'm going to get rid of the container because I'm not particularly really using it. It was more of a, let's try this out. Okay, so you remove the container. Now, if I go over here in LS, it's not broken or removed the local stuff. It's only the container stuff itself that's gone, as in the physical container on our system. If I go and do that code stuff again, it will build out a fresh container again and do it. So be mindful of that. If you don't delete the container, it will just connect to that container each time and go through for that instance. So that's really all I wanted to do for this portion. And then you can have a little play about with it, look at the Docker documentation and see all the different containers that you can get into it. Pretty much there's Dockers for so many different possible dev environments that you can just go through and have a little play with them all. So it's been awesome. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next tooling video. Bye-bye.